Greetings everyone, welcome to Katic Reviews. 10 years ago, I made a fateful decision based on 599 US dollars in an E3 presentation. The E3 presentation featured a game and a style that I had never seen before. Bloody, visceral, dark, gritty, and strangely in third person. It was unlike anything at the time that had ever been done. The game was Gears of War, and it convinced me to jump sides to the Xbox side, a side in which I've not left since. Yes, we patched up our relationship at PlayStation, but our relationship is somewhat different than it was before. So, fast forward through 4 different iterations of Gears, each with their own different perspectives, and we're led here to the next main numbered game in the series and the 5th overall. Gears of War 4, the first to be made exclusively for the Xbox One and the Windows 10 PCs. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. This is the first game that is part of Xbox's Play Anywhere campaign. So if you buy it on PC, you're also buying it on console and vice versa. Which is a plus, although I won't give any points for that. But it's nice, I guess. But does Gears of War 4 live up to its series legacy? Well, if you consider its series legacy, which is more of a tale of brothers in arms and a family through strife and through thick and thin, going through the ups and downs and the horrors and tragedy that war can accost. Yes, many people would consider this cliche at this point, considering how many games have taken this trope. Gears of War was one of the first console games to take the over-the-top action movie bromance of 80s action flicks, but put it in the dark and gritty theater of war. We ended up falling in love with Dom, Marcus, Cole, and the rest. And at the end of Gears of War 3, we were satiated. We were satisfied. The ending was proper. The war was over. Humanity had triumphed. Now, years later, a new group of former employees from People Can Fly and the remains of Epic that didn't join Cliffy B for his next venture form a group called the Coalition. It is the Coalition's job, similar to that of 343, to keep the legacy of Gears of War ticking. Sadly, however, it seems in their effort to keep it ticking, it seems on the surface, there's a lot of misdirection, a lot of non-focus. The key word that I would use to describe Gears of War 4 is confusion. On one half, it wants to honor the series' legacy with gameplay and especially multiplayer modes that harken back to Gears of War past, and by having old school characters return in the new school campaign. While in others, it wants to make a new legacy and bridge a new story for the next, obvious, 2 games in the franchise. But sadly, instead of committing to one or the other, it tries to mix both. The result in total is a story of 2 games. One that wants to honor the game's legacy and does so with grand aplomb, while on the other end is a confusing mismatch of undedicated and unfocused ideas and a lack of commitment to any one direction. Gears of War 4 doesn't feel like one game, it feels like two. And in this in the spirit of that confusion lies a lot of good things, but a lot of bad things as well. See, the game picks up years after the Locust victory by the Cog. However, the Cog have become extremely paranoid over their victory over the Locusts, making Attack on Titan style walled cities and having a very strict martial law of government with an even stricter military force. Marcus has moved on to what seems like a rather gentle, unwarlike, peaceful life. Having a son named James, or as he's referred to throughout the game, JD, with Anya Stroud, who, unfortunately for reasons untold in the game, which, by the way, there's a lot of that, and that's one of the biggest problems with the single-player campaign mode. There's a lot of information given, but no pretense. There's a lot of clues to how the world ended up this way, but not enough straightforward information. You feel as though you're in a time capsule of the present time, but you're given absolutely nothing to go off of, except a lot has happened. Sarah's environment has become broken and trembled. Windstorms known as wind flares are constant and dangerous due to the planet's lack of emotion. Places that used to be monuments to the war and monuments to the old society are being taken up by vegetation and the reviving world around it. But most importantly, there's a melancholy tone set around Gears of War 4's environment. That the war may be over, but the sadness has just begun. That humankind is recovering, but it's more of a shield rather than the truth about how they feel about it. They don't feel safe. They feel like war could break out again at any moment. And sadly, it's about to. As in the campaign, a new enemy known as the Swarm. But let me stop right there. It's not a new enemy. It's the Locust 2.0. You see, the Locust, spoilers, decided to cocoon themselves like butterflies and mutate into a second, more dangerous form, now driven not by a queen, but by a collective hive mind. These creatures, known as the Swarm, are more powerful and dangerous than their previous compatriots. The only problem is they share more in common with the enemies before than anything new. Yes, types of enemies like pouncers, carriers, enemies like Jubies and others. That's some new enemy types. But you can clearly see their ancestry if you go back to the previous Gears of War games. Jubies are essentially your tickers. Carriers are your big, bulking behemoths similar to that of grinders and berserkers. pouncers are your more agile types. And of course you have your standard drones, which are your standard grunts that practically do the same thing as the Locust's normal enemies. Also compounded that the fact that they come out of nest. But let's be honest, these nests are glorified emergence holes. Nothing really has changed. And that's the sad thing. Because in the first two missions of the game, you are not battling these creatures. You are battling the cog itself in their mechanized force. You see, underpinned with the war with the Swarm is also a war between the cog itself and this group known as the Outsiders. The Outsiders are pretty much hippies, let's be honest. They want to preserve their own freedom and what's left of Sarah's environment away from the walled cities and idealism of war. And this group constantly has to raid cog settlements to make ends meet, to grab power for their struggling settlements, but also have to constantly be fighting off cog resistance at the same time. In fact, JD and Dell are former cog that have flipped sides. The other main character, Kate, is daughter of the leader of one of the outsider groups. Who she really isn't revealed until the last part of the game. It's a big reveal, but it's not given as much gravitas as it needs. And although the final parts of the campaign are some of the most exhilarating moments in the game, it all falls a little flat due to the deadpan script with little to no character growth or context. We're given the bare bones, and we're only given the emotional weight behind it in the late half. But by then, most people aren't going to connect to these characters in an emotional level. They're just going to connect to them as cool people with cool guns, which many people could say is the same thing that happened in Gears 1, so seemingly this is double hurt because it's history essentially repeating itself. And JD, much like his father had with his grandfather, has father-son issues on how to deal with the problem. But what makes the story campaign even worse is that Marcus is thrown into the game around Act 3 and remains throughout. In fact, the entirety of Chapter 5 might as well be called the Beatles Reunion, Gears of War Edition, as the surviving characters from Gears of War 3 unite to help the new crew finish the job. You see, for a game like this, that's supposed to be around a son or a second set of characters that are supposed to go through the horrors and the growth of character building within a franchise, you're supposed to see a passing of the torch moment. Sadly, the torch is neither passed fully. It's more hot potatoed, or if it is passed, it is passed rather forcedly. Because the main problem with this is Marcus is still overshadowing even the new characters that deserve development and time. Which sadly doesn't give you the chance to really get to know or connect with these characters or feel that they are the new team, just the replacement guys, 'cause you could easily make a case that Marcus could be easily playable as his son or Del or any member of the new crew. They don't feel like they've earned their place, and it hurts the campaign narrative very staunchly, rather than falling through with the same beats of the first Gears of War nearly through the letter and nearly not committing to the more interesting subplot underneath it about how the Cog and the Outsiders are battling for control of society as the Swarm are approaching. If that were the story, there would be a lot more interesting game here. You could have thrown the Swarm in late, and it would have given a greater context. And you could have both sides battling each other while the Swarm are slowly taking positions away. But rather than that, they rush straight into the same old Gears, same old routine, same old enemy. There isn't faith in this storyline, and that's why it falls sorely flat. But in the gameplay department, however, it is still tried and true Gears. Active reloading, stop and popping. The cover system that redefined third-person games 10 years ago is still as strong as ever. But admittedly, it's starting to show its age. But to try to stagnate the age a bit, they've added a new pull people out of cover mechanic. Sadly, this doesn't work, mainly because it's a two-step process. In this two-step process, you pull the enemy from cover using one button. He's staggered, and then using a completely different button, you perform the execution that finishes the job. It's neither smooth nor intuitive, and because the AI is so smart, even on novice level, you won't find yourself using it too much, seeing that if you try, there'll be a hail of bullets headed your way. And speaking of those bullets, there are a few new guns, mainly a brand new electric sniper rifle that, because of how it controls, is rather ineffective. A new weapon that's ripped straight out of Dead Space, the Buzzkill. Kill is a little bit more likable though, and effective in large crowds. The drop shot though is the most powerful of these weapons that can go over cover with a big, massive explosion. If you can learn to aim it right, this thing is a death dealer, especially in multiplayer. But sadly, multiplayer also suffers from the same old. All the standard modes are here, and how most people play the multiplayer in Gears is the same old. Natural shotguns, straight to your face, running, rolling, bartersome. There is no tactical strategy in Gears multiplayer, just a lot of people running around with shotguns. When you have more interesting weapons, or they'll use the drop shot, because it's overly powerful. And because Gears multiplayer still sorely lacks a true radar to create movement and proper placement, it can become very annoying to find enemies, let alone, because of the same old, get a proper tactical drop on them. If you liked Gears multiplayer in the past and don't have many problems with this, you still won't. It will still feel like a comfortable old shoe, added with the new physics and wind directions, and, thankfully, better level design. Gears multiplayer is still, for some, a very fun and enjoyable experience, and new modes such as dodgeball add a spin or two to the overall proceedings. But I would be remiss without bringing up Horde mode. Horde mode has returned, and thanks to a new item known as the Fabricator, making your base and holding your fences is one, a little bit easier on the crafting side of things, seeing that all you have to do is go back to the initial box to get the defenses you need. After that, you build them where you want them in a pretty easy setup. But here's the thing, the only way to get points for the Fabricator is by destroying enemies and bringing scrap back to the Fabricator. That way it recognizes it. Everything from defenses to weapons can be built within the Fabricator. But of course, as always, teamwork is critical in Horde. And more so than ever. Every 10 waves, there's a boss, like in 2.0. 50 waves, survive them all, keep the Fabricator alive, you win. But it won't be easy, seeing that some of the bosses are ripped straight from the campaign and can be real challenges. It takes real teamwork to play Horde. Unfortunately, I could get no such team by the time I wrote this, but it's still a blast whether privately or with a full team. Just make sure communication be the key, and then you can find a team that fully commits. It's the best mode in the game and well worth multiplayer-wise the price of admission. Speaking of price, however, microtransactions have entered the game. Just like in its predecessor Halo, there's cards that you can unlock using credits that you get through multiplayer gameplay to unlock weapon skins, different characters, and experience and power boost. It's not exactly pay to win, but I could see in the future it slowly drifting this way, which has me scratching my head, which is the overall viewpoint of the game. A lot of the creative decisions made, especially in the campaign mode, are head-scratching decisions. None of them truly make sense, but none of them are truly bad either. It's a game trying to live up to its already harrowing predecessors, like 2 and 3, but a game trying to forge its own path, much like the first one. Sadly, the path that the writers and the creative team of the Coalition have decided to make is a path that has already been traveled before. It's still a fun path loaded with Call of Duty-esque super moments that are enjoyable. There is no doubt you will have an enjoyable time playing Gears of War 4 as a Gears fan. It's just too bad, unlike Halo 4, it proved its reason to exist outside of the multiplayer and tried to introduce an enemy and an enemy type that truly differentiated itself from the storyline of the past. One step in, one step out. It doesn't make for a bad game, but it doesn't leave me hope that we'll be getting anything particularly new. It was nice to suit up again. Really, it was. I'm just wishing this army was focused on target. That's why Gears of War 4 gets a 6. out of 10. But if you enjoyed the previous Gears of War games, you won't find anything too bad here. But if you truly want the same experience, but better, well, try going on to the other system and maybe trying, possibly if you like third-person games, Uncharted 4, maybe The Division's more your speed, or perhaps if you're looking for a better shooter with a more interesting story, maybe try Killzone Shadowfall. That might work, or perhaps even Titanfall 1 or 2 if you're so inclined. You may find something more to your liking rather than this. The only other Gears recommendation I could make is Ultimate Edition. But most Gears fans watching this will probably already have it, so it's a misnomer. So, until next time, leave your comments about Gears 4 down in the comment section below, and tell me which of the two storylines you want to see more of. Humans versus Swarm, or COG versus Outsiders. And leave your thoughts on that also down in the comment section below. Until next time, I'm Nirvana Sparkle. Find peace in your own Nirvana, and thanks for checking us out.